guys, it's Jackie at Famished Farm, and we're back this week with another pantry challenge. And this week was fun because we spent some time in Nashville and we had company come back here for several nights. So we made some recipes that we have made in previous week's pantry challenge for our guest. We did the German apple pancakes and both sandwich bread and French bread. And then we did the chicken parm from Scratch Pantry. Everything was delicious. All three of our new recipes were a big hit with the four of us. One of those recipes actually was just Rod and I. We made it after they left. But so what are we making this week? We did 2 nights up in Nashville. We did 1 night out here in Northwest Alabama. Then we did the grilled chicken kebabs, the chicken parm. We did wiener wraps, you know, those hot dog with crescent rolls and cheese. That was strictly comfort and easy when we came back from Nashville. Out of the freezer, I pulled the meatless spaghetti pie that I had made with the texturized vegetable protein. And I did a tuna zucchini cake that is kind of, anyway, it's delicious. It's a recipe from a friend of mine. And we make that, I haven't made it actually in quite a while, but we're trying to get more fish in our meal, so that was a good way to do it. So all in all, a fantastic week. Our new recipes, number 1, croissant French toast casserole by Sweet and Savory Meals was excellent. A crock pot breakfast casserole by thegraciouswife.com, also very good, and it made a huge amount. I did up and play with the ingredients of that one a little bit, but we literally will get 4 breakfast for dinner meals out of it for Rod and I. And actually I have somebody else coming in town just for an overnight next week. I may pull out 2 servings of that, 2 packages of that, and use that for the 4 of us for breakfast. And then the third recipe was grilled chicken kebabs from dinneratthezoo.com. Very good, nice and light, grilled, so I don't have to cook it inside. Rod does the grilling outside. My sister and her husband both loved it and said it's a great kind of low-cal diet, summery, lighter type recipe. That was after the chicken parm the night before. That was very rich and delicious with the French bread. So that is our week. We'll get right to the cooking, and I hope you guys have fun. Leave any comments down in the comments section and let me know what you're cooking. What are you guys working on? And come back, check out the channel. We're doing a huge year of minimizing, both from a diet perspective for me, our budget, our clutter, and so there's other things on the channel that I think you might like. Give us a try. So thanks for coming, and we'll get right to the cooking. Hang on. So we don't do a whole lot of breakfast recipes, but this croissant French toast casserole is going into the breakfast file. It was really good. I am inspired because my sister and her husband are coming, and my sister is really the one that got me on this huge recipe kick, and part of the reason that my recipe stash is so big. Growing up, she wasn't a great cook. She's the kid that made fudge for the bake sale, and she used like a cup of salt instead of sugar. She just, she wasn't a great cook, and so she didn't like cooking. And she moved up north before she retired, and she, had a lot of time, so she really applied herself to her cooking with her husband's encouragement, and she really upped her game. So we now send each other, and we always have, kind of send each other recipes back and forth, things that we find really good. And so thanks Jody, this is the reason you guys are getting these recipes. You're getting turned on to these recipes, hopefully. But this particular recipe, it looks like it's very rich, and so I'm just going to make a half a recipe. So the recipe calls for 9 large eggs. I'm going to use 5. And then it calls for both whole milk and half and half. Now, I can tell you, if you just want to use skim milk in this recipe, you do you. I think it will be just fine. Again, this was kind of a company, made for company recipe, so I'm going to do pretty much like the recipe calls for, and you know, we're going to go whole hog on this. So a half a cup of whole milk, I'm using a half cup measure, and 1 cup of half and half. And again, this is me having the recipe. And so we're going to mix that all together, get the eggs whisked. Oh, wait, the recipe does call for whisking the eggs, milk, half and half together with the rest, some of the rest of these ingredients. So I'm pulling out my brown sugar, and we're going to add actually brown, and it looks like white sugar. So a little bit of brown sugar, and again, I'm having the recipe. So looks like I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of both brown sugar and white sugar. And then I have my fancy bottle of Trader Joe's bourbon vanilla, and a teaspoon of that, a half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Check the recipe, Jack. Yeah, let's not screw up this recipe that is for company. And this is my Watkins cinnamon. So we'll get that in there. And then it calls for a half a teaspoon of nutmeg. So I'm going to use just part of that spoon that I just used with nutmeg. The spices in this were dead on, so delicious. You don't have to vary too much from that. And now we're going to start whisking this together. Now, if you feel like pulling your blender out and making your blender container dirty, go for it. The recipe does just call for whisking these ingredients, but if you like cleaning your blender, you go ahead and pull that out and use that instead. I just use my Pampered Chef little food whisk here to get the job done. You do you. Now, I have remembered to take my croissants out of the freezer, and these are just Walmart croissants. They were very good, even though they were Walmart. And the recipe calls for 10 large croissants. As you could see there, this is a 6-pack, and I end up just using all 6 that were in the pack. And you want to cut these, you know, bite-size-ish pieces. Although this custard that we just made with the eggs, it's, as you can see, the croissant's going to soak in. So it really doesn't matter. Take as long or as little time as you like cutting your croissants. So here I have finished the last croissant, and I'm going to switch out my whisk for just a wood spoon to mix this up. And don't forget, calls for a half a cup on the half recipe of chopped pecans. So I'm going to remember to grab those and get those in here too. And I'm just going to grab the half cup measure that I use for the milk and do my pecans this way. And these are pre-chopped pecans. They were quite big, but they ended up tasting great in the recipe. If you have time to toast your pecans, do that. It always tastes better. I don't know why I don't do that more often. Okay, so just finish mixing that up. It does not call for letting it soak any particular length of time. I don't think that would hurt. So if you wanted to stop here, cover it, and put it in the fridge, and then bake it in the morning for your breakfast, I think that would work just perfectly. Here I have sprayed my 8.5 or 8 by 8 or 9 by 9 equivalent. I'm not exactly sure what size baking dish this is, but I'm thinking it's my closest to half a 9 by 13 pan that I have. And because I don't know exactly how much this is going to rise, I decide to use the rest of the mixture there, just put it in a small loaf pan and bake that separately. Here are my 2 pans that are going to go into my 350-degree oven. Don't be scared. You're about to see me in my winter bathrobe and getting my oven ready for the baking of this casserole. And oh yeah, I've got my glasses on, not my contacts. It's not pretty, guys, but this is real life. So here it is into the oven, and I don't remember how long I baked this for. Because it's in a smaller pan, it probably is going to take less time. So my instinct is I checked this at 30 minutes. It came out beautifully. Our next recipe is the grilled chicken kebabs from dinneratthezoo.com. And I had some leftover green pepper in the fridge, so I'm just going to cut those up. And it does say that you want to use 1 red and 1 yellow bell pepper cut into 1-inch pieces. I am using, I did buy a 3-pack, so I did happen to have a red and a yellow. And I would have, if the price difference was huge, I would have just used green. It is very pretty when it comes out of the off the grill with the different colors, but it's not necessary. They taste the same. Did I say I doubled this recipe? I maybe not doubled, maybe 1.5 times, but I happened to use, it called for 2 small zucchini. These are more like medium zucchini, and I'm going to cut them into 1-inch slices. I just keep them in rounds. They'll stay on your skewer better if you do that. And then after I get the zucchini cut up, I switch over to the red onion, and this also says just to chop into 1-inch pieces. And I will take a minute to separate all the layers of the onion so they'll go on the skewers quicker. On a different day, I have decided to prepare the chicken. So I've got these humongous chicken breasts that are each like a pound, and I am doubling the recipe. So I've got plenty of chicken for 4 people. Any leftovers, which there are some, go into the freezer for toppings for salads. I have my meat now chopped into approximately 1-inch pieces, and I'm going to prepare the marinade, which they say to do in a bowl, but because I'm doing this on a different day, I'm just going to put it in a Ziploc bag, and I'm using this same as the recipe calls for, even though I'm doubling the chicken. So that's a 1/4 cup of olive oil, and I am going to then add my honey, which also calls for a 1/4 cup, because my measuring cup is already full of oil. It should make that honey slip out a little easier. And this is just raw honey that I get from local farmers. Actually, you want to know that I did get from a store somewhere, not from a local farmer. I usually buy from a local farmer at craft shows, art and craft shows, but not this particular honey. So that's going to go into the bag with the olive oil. And then 1/3 cup of soy sauce, which I use up what soy sauce I've got in here, so I have to open another bottle, but I do get the full 1/3 cup in there. I'm going to prepare this to go into the freezer in a Ziploc bag, so I'm going to label the bag, but I do at some point here remember that I have not added the garlic, salt, and pepper, so I do go back and hit that. The recipe does call for minced garlic. I just, for convenience, use my powdered garlic and some salt and pepper. And then once that's in, once I've got I check the recipe and everything's in, mush it all back together, flatten it out, and it goes into the freezer. So on the day that we've decided to grill this, it comes out of the freezer, so it has time to thaw. And I pull my stainless steel skewers out, a cookie tray, and the grill basket that I'm going to cook the skewers in just to make it, turning it easier. It all flips over in one. And I do spray the grill basket just to make sure that we have no stickiness. And then it's just a simple task of threading the chicken pieces onto the skewers, alternating pieces of onion and your peppers and the zucchini. And you all know how to do that, I'm guessing. It, again, not rocket science, just make it look pretty. My brother-in-law suggested we add mushrooms to the next time, and I think that is a fabulous idea. Wish I'd thought of that. And these are just super easy, super delicious. And like I said, we're doing it in a grill basket just to make the flipping of the kebabs easier. If you do them individually, you'll have more grill marks and searing on more sides of the meat. When they're into this grill basket, it does kind of crowd them a little bit, but honestly, they were so good, it didn't suffer at all. Delicious. And our last new recipe this week is the crock pot overnight breakfast casserole, and that's by thegraciouswife.com. I don't make this for my company because we had enough breakfast without it. So I'm making this just for breakfast for dinner for Rod and I one night. And we're going to start by dicing up some vegetables. I do a half of this onion. It calls for a green pepper and a red pepper, a half of each. I'm just using what I've got on hand. And I might have gone a little heavy on the peppers just to use up what I had in the refrigerator. I think I have this yellow one and a green one that was just on the verge of wrinkling, so we're going to use all of those in this particular dish. If you happen to see the little copper pot, that is my compost bin, and all the scraps go into there and then outside onto the compost pile. Now, on a previous day, I have already prepped the breakfast sausage. I have browned up a pound of breakfast sausage, and I had planned on having a half a pound of bacon to put in this, but I ended up using the bacon in our breakfast with the croissant casserole. So here I am. I'm not going to have to brown the sausage, so I'm going to use a tablespoon or so of my bacon grease just to give the flavor of some bacon in the pan to saute the onions and the bell peppers. So the recipe obviously wants you to brown the sausage, onion, and peppers until cooked through and the sausage is no longer pink. Then drain it and set it aside. I've already drained the sausage, so I am just going to be in the bacon grease, just sauteing the onions and peppers. And they cooked for several minutes. I was doing other stuff in the kitchen, so they just cooked along merrily. And then when I feel all the veggies are sauteed enough, I'm going to add back this drained, browned breakfast sausage into the skillet, and I'm just going to warm that up to bring it up to temperature. And I've set my crock pot out, and it does say to spray your 6-quart or bigger crock pot with cooking spray or spread butter. And I'm going to go ahead and start heating this up on high. I'm making this for dinner the day that I'm preparing this. So I'm decided to go on high temperature, and it says that it will cook in 2 to 3 hours. So that's the plan. And here's where I get a little creative with the ingredients. On the hash browns, it only calls for a 1-pound package. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a 1 pound, 10 ounce or so package of the Walmart hash browns. And I go ahead and put what I think is, roughly half the package on this first layer. And then it calls for layering. On the other side of my counter, I decide to look at the recipe and figure out what else I need, and it pretty much just turns out to be the shredded cheese, and then obviously the custard mixture that's going to go in the casserole. So I am making a full recipe, and of course I go to my eggs. It calls for a dozen. I only have 9 eggs in that package. So I am just going to go with what I've got, and I use a little less of the milk and possibly the sour cream that it calls for. It calls for a cup of milk and a half a cup of sour cream. It'll be just fine with only 9 out of the 12 eggs, trust me. So I've got all my eggs, the 9 of the 12 eggs ready to go, and I remember that I've covered my meat and veggie mixture over here, and I better give it a stir, so we do that. And then I'm just going to prepare, in effect, the scrambled egg mixture that's going to go in the crock pot. So we've got a cup of milk and and that was, I think, a partial cup of milk. And I'm going to do the salt and the pepper. And then I've got a package there you'll see of sour cream. And I know there was not a half a cup of sour cream in here. I just used, best guess basically on what was left. A couple big dollops. And then I'm simply going to whisk all of this together. Again, use your blender if you'd rather. I just use my little Pampered Chef whisk to mix this together. The sour cream wasn't 100% mixed in, but it is just fine, trust me. Back at the crock pot, we are going to take half of the sausage pepper mixture and put it over the potatoes that are already in the crock pot. And I'm just going to try to even that out across the surface. And then we're going to put half of the cheese on. You will reserve the rest of the cheese to add to the casserole when it's about done cooking, and then just let that melt over the casserole. Continuing with the layers, just put your remaining hash browns in there and even them out. And then your remaining meat and pepper mixture goes on top of that and even them out. And then we're going to get that egg mixture poured over everything. Cover your crock pot with the lid. And then it says to cook on low for 6 to 8 hours or on high for 2 to 3 hours. And as I said earlier, this is our dinner tonight. So I am going to start it on high. And I end up leaving it on high for 2 hours. And then the next half hour, I put it on low. And I was in and out of the kitchen, so I was able to check on it. The hash browns got a nice golden to dark golden brown. They did not burn at all. At that half hour point, I did put the remaining cheese on. And then once that half hour on low was done, I just turned the crock pot on to warm and kept it on there until we decided to eat. This recipe is a keeper, and I'm trying to think back to how long I cooked that half a pan of casserole and the little mini loaf pan. I think I started checking it at 20 minutes. So between 20 and 30 minutes is probably the time it took to cook this. I followed the recipe pretty much as written. I did not put the optional glaze on. We did serve this with our sugar-free syrup. Actually, my brother-in-law had it with the maple syrup. We used sugar-free and some bacon. You can see on the back of the dish there. It was great. I highly recommend this. The grilled chicken kabob recipe was also very good. It is going into the rotation. Just recommend add mushrooms. Can't hurt. And we did double the meat. I kept all of the other ingredients the same. We had more than enough for 4 big appetites. And can't tell you how long it took to grill. This is obviously the ungrilled. I seem to not have saved a picture of it coming off the grill. But very good. Highly recommend. Just an easy, simple grilled chicken kebab. And our final recipe, crockpot overnight breakfast casserole. Now this one I did play around with the ingredients a little bit. I added more of the frozen hash browns. I doubled the breakfast sausage and basically left the bacon off. I think I did have one piece of bacon that I put over the top, and I used bacon grease to saute the peppers. And the onion, I used fewer eggs, a little less milk and sour cream. And I did follow the cooking on high directions. I cooked it for 2 hours on high, a half an hour on low, and then when it was all set, the egg mixture was all set and cooked, I just kept it on warm until we were ready to eat dinner that night. It was delicious.